Hi, my name is Sheila. Welcome to the video. We are going to be talking about why we feel like it's okay to be average. Thanks for checking in and joining me in this video. What we're going to be talking about is how we can become our best selves, that person that we really want to be, and move beyond mediocrity and just feeling okay with just being average. I was having a conversation with my daughter. We sometimes go on these long walks where we talk about all sorts of things. In this case, we were talking about productivity. It sort of came up. Her peer group tends to be made up of a lot of people who are high achievers. When you surround yourself with people who have high expectations for themselves, high standards for themselves, high levels of productivity, then you start to see that as your baseline. That becomes the minimum of how you live. That's the status quo. That's your everyday life. That's what you get accustomed to. But so many of us are surrounded by people, places, and things that are all very average, very mediocre. It's just enough to get by. The people we see are people who don't even value themselves enough to be the best version of themselves. Now, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is, if you don't value yourself, then you can't really expect other people to value you either. In my daughter's case, she and her friends, to some extent, try to one-up each other. They push each other to excel, but they also have these very interesting conversations about life and what they want to do and the kinds of jobs that they're interested in. And they have conversations about being productive, productivity, and what they are trying to get done. My daughter is only 20 years old, and I feel like I have to look at myself and go, well, wait, am I being productive enough? Am I using my time efficiently? Am I getting done the things that I need to get done for me? It makes me go back and sort of question myself. Sheila, remember those things, those goals that you said you had? Are you really working toward those every day? Or are you hanging out on Netflix? No, I'm actually doing both. It was just interesting to hear her talk about it because she's only 20, yet she is already looking at her life in terms of what are the goals that I have for myself? What do I need to do to accomplish those goals? Because I want to be my best self. I want to have a certain lifestyle. I want to be able to take care of myself and be a responsible adult. What do I have to do to achieve that? Over the last couple of years, I've started to make some changes in the work that I'm doing and moving more toward doing everything in a digital space. That's just where the world is going anyway. I'm happy to go along. What I am trying to do, though, is to sort of gauge that in terms of what it is I'm trying to accomplish and not live in this space where everything's just sort of okay. I have become less of that person as I've gotten older and more of this person who envisions a certain life for myself. Sometimes because we're so in spaces that are defined by being average and mediocre, we start to really see that as the baseline. Like that becomes our world. That's our environment. We get very used to that. I remember being in one particular job where there was this feeling that if you wanted to excel in your job and that if you did more, it was somehow frowned upon, that you were doing too much. And these days we'd say you were doing the most. And they weren't. They were just trying to do a good job, a really good job at what their job was. They loved it and they actually wanted to excel in it and wanted to do some really cool things. Yet there were tons of people in the organization who just sort of poo-pooed them and looked down on what they were trying to do. The environment, the organizational culture that you're in can then sort of say to you, well, we don't want you doing all of that. We want you down here. We want you doing less. We don't want you doing the most. We don't want you doing exciting and exceptional new things. We just want you to be mediocre like we are. In those cases, it's hard to step away to be able to say, okay, this is maybe not the right environment for me. We may not have resources in place to be able to just walk away from a job just because there's not a good organizational fit at that time. And my computer's fan. Even if we can't do it at work, even if our work environment is just filled with mediocrity for whatever reasons, everything being average, whatever the reason is, and we can't leave, we have to stay. There are other hours in the day. For instance, when we get home on the weekend, all of those times are times that we can then sort of reflect to say, okay, how am I using this time to meet those goals that I really have for myself, instead of just sort of, taking that same attitude home, because that's the problem. You spend so much of your day in your work environment. If that work environment is one that is depressing your skills and depressing the expectations and standards that you have, you then become infected by that. You can now take that home and share that with the rest of your life. And so you become susceptible to now being mediocre at home and in other projects that you may do with other organizations or out in the community, instead of still trying to go back and then say, okay, wait. I'm leaving that mindset at work. When I get at home, I'm going to take on a different kind of mindset. It can be very hard to flip that switch and even recognize that that's a switch that you need to flip, because that organizational culture has now been so ingrained into your psyche. What do we do about it though? You're probably like, Sheila, it's great that you're talking about this. You talk about setting goals and trying to be more productive, trying to meet those health and fitness goals that you have for yourself, helping push us forward. But what happens when we get stuck? How do we get out of that? There is one thing in particular that I do find that helps me on some occasions. That is number one, recognizing that is going on. And number two, putting some sort of transition point between those two worlds. For instance, if my work culture truly is, as I just said, this place where mediocrity and averageness and anything that has lower expectations and standards, if that is the culture that you're dealing with, and you're saying, I do not want to take that home. I'm tired from working all day. I don't know that I have the energy to transition like I want to and be able to come home and maybe cook a great dinner or go for a walk with my family or have an evening workout or engage in some social activities, because I'm just bummed from, that whole thing, tired from it because I've worked all day. I can't quite get over here to my best self. How do I do it? I usually find that I have to have some sort of transition piece in here. For me, one of the things that I use sometimes is exercise. I will literally get on my water war for this very reason. It provides sort of that solitude, because if you've watched any of my other videos, you have heard me talk about just the sound of the water swishing can have sort of a mental, it can change your mental frame of reference. The way your sensories are impacted, I think, is part of what helps the transition. If you were out on a beach, if you walked out at the end of a day with all of that, and you walked out on the beach and you just sat there on the sand with your shoes off and your feet touching the sand, and you got to hear the waves and see the water rushing up and then pulling back, it's hard not to take that in for a little while and start to feel a little more calm, a little more rested, a little more peaceful after leaving some things over here. And if you can take enough time to sort of regroup, you can then say, okay, now I'm going to focus my energies over here. For me, it has been the water rower a lot of times, and sometimes the treadmill too, but the water rower, and I will put on, like some aromatherapy so that adds something to the room too. And it sort of helps recenter me so that I don't wind up living in this space of just mediocrity and just being average and not having any expectations for myself or standards for myself, not even valuing myself enough to care. I want to be that person. I do want to be able to say, I have one life here on this planet, and I hope to fully take advantage of every day. Someone had posted on Facebook, and the person said, I used to say I'm going to live my every day to the fullest because you don't know that you have the next day. And the person said, I think I'm going to change that to I'm going to live every moment to the fullest because you don't know, that you're going to have the next moment. And it was a really good way to sort of think about it, because sometimes we can sort of push off the day, but you do only have these moments in time, and that's it. You're not guaranteed any other moments. So if you don't feel good about what you're doing in the moments that you're in, what are you doing to change that? If you're just complaining about it, stop complaining. Nobody wants to listen to you. Nobody wants to hear you complain. What people will do, though, is to support you when you say, you know what, I'm making some changes in my life. But that's pretty much it. This sort of idea that we can try to achieve more for ourselves, and we don't have to settle for what's going on in the world around us, that we can try every day to be our best selves and set high expectations, not for other people, high expectations for ourselves, high standards for ourselves, for things that we want to do, for this one life that we have. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and peace.